Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. We are going to start this side event co-organized by UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, and United Nations University. Welcome to the session, Transformative Pathways for Climate Action through Open and Citizen Science and Youth Empowerment. I would like to invite His Excellency Vice Minister, Mr. Hiroshi Ono, in the podium, Vice Minister for Global Environmental Affairs, Japan. Your Excellency, please. I would also like to invite Dr. Shen Xiaomeng, Vice Rector in Europe, United Nations University, in the podium, please. UNU Institute for Environment and Human Security. We have Dr. Abou Amani, must be connected from UNESCO headquarters Paris. He is the Director of Water Science Division and Secretary of Intergovernmental Hydrological Program. Abou, I hope you are able to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, this session, which will talk about pathways for climate action through open and citizen science and youth empowerment, as United Nations scientific organization, UNESCO, which has endorsed open science recommendation in its 41st session of the General Conference last year, advocating science should be accessible to all. And it should be open so that we can test and validate through citizen engagement processes. So we will hear today, of course, high-level speech, opening remark, but also case studies that will highlight the importance of science-based validation process in order to achieve SDG goals. The side event will explore how the harness scientific knowledge, cooperation, and capacity building for transformative action on climate change and sustainable development goals. I just want to check if Dr. Abou Amani is with us from UNESCO headquarters Paris. While waiting for online participants to join, I would like to invite Professor Shen Xiaomeng, Vice Rector in Europe, United Nations University, and Director, UNU Institute for Environment and Human Security, to provide her opening remark. Dr. Shen, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Welcome to this session, everyone. I hope you have had a nice COP so far and still energized. Transformation or transformative is really the words we talk quite a lot about and hear a lot. But what does it mean? And how does transformation happen? I'm glad that UNESCO and UNU are leading this conversation. How and what open and citizen science and youth empowerment can contribute to such a transformation. Open science, citizen science, and youth empowerment all imply inclusive participation and expansion of our knowledge systems. Science, comparing to many alternative knowledge systems, such as indigenous knowledge, traditional wisdom, is actually a very young discipline. It started during the Renaissance. It's only a couple of 100 years old. We might think that science would provide us the ultimate truth, but in fact, it is only one of the possible truths. It should be contested and challenged as any other knowledge system. Making science more open to societies and include citizens into the social dialogue debate will only make science more solid and more robust. Also, please don't forget, scientists are also citizens. We talk about citizen science, but scientists are citizens in the first place. We all carry the same societal responsibilities together. And youth is not only an integral part of our societies, but also represent the interests of the future generations. To engage them and co-create knowledge is essential to design a desirable future for all. Knowledge needs to be created intergenerationally to serve the entire humanity. There are many good examples to do it around the world. We listened to some of them during this session. I believe we're all here for a cause, which is to transform our ways of thinking and doing things to enable climate actions. You will do nothing less in this session than creating a different reality, a different future. The future is literally in our own hands. Science is the tool we use to create that future. I'll stop here and wish you a successful session. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Xiaomeng. Indeed, solid science provide solution. And I recall recently UN convened a preparatory meeting for the UN conference, and one of the game changer identified was science-based evaluation process, particularly in the context of water management. I'll come back to you on that. Let me check whether we have our online speaker got access from the system. Not yet. There is always difficulty and challenges when you have to moderate a virtual session. I remember we had similar problem last year in Glasgow as well. So in the meantime, let me introduce myself. I forgot to tell you who I am. My name is Anil Mishra. I'm Chief of Section Hydrological System, Climate and Adaptation of UNESCO. And this program, we've been working together with the UNU team for many months now. And thanks to both organizations' effort, we have excellent case studies. I hope the technical problem will be solved soon so that you will have opportunity. And also, I would like to invite you to present your views and ideas about citizens' engagement in the scientific processes so that we don't remain in ivory tower, only talking to who is already converted, but we really need to validate through citizen engagement in the process for sustainable development goals. So with that, I have a pleasure to invite His Excellency Hiroshi Ono, Vice Minister for Global Environmental Affairs, Japan. Minister Ono has an environmental engineering background. He has a rich experiences of dealing with climate change, resource, circular economy, and biodiversity. And we would like to hear from you, Your Excellency, your opening remark.
Thank you very much for your kind and detailed introduction for me. And Excellencies, good afternoon. It is my great honor to be here with you all today. I would like to express my appreciation to UNESCO and United Nations University for organizing this seminar to share essential roles of open science and empowerment of citizens and youth to accelerate transformative actions on climate change and the SDGs. We are gathering here in Sharm el-Sheikh to advance our discussions and actions to avert climate crisis, to address the significant challenge of climate and sustainable development. The inclusion and involvement of citizens and youth are indispensable. The role of open science, education, and empowerment is more vital than ever. As Japan has pledged achieving carbon neutrality by 2050, the Ministry of the Environment, together with the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology, has been promoting education and youth empowerment to transform socio-economic systems and citizens' lifestyles towards those compatible with carbon neutrality. We have established and are promoting national and regional ESD resource centers and their open network so that stakeholders can learn and collaborate with each other to advance education on climate and sustainable development. We also provide educational materials and training programs on decarbonization and SDGs. We are working with UNUIAS and supporting a global multi-stakeholder network of regional centers of expertise on ESD. Nearly 200 regional centers are making vital differences in fostering sustainable development around the world. Besides, to ensure full implementation of the Paris Agreement, capacity building of young practitioners is imperative in formulating and implementing effective policies, as well as in bridging science, policy, and society. In this regard, we appreciate the UNUIAS new initiative of the postgraduate degree specialization on the Paris Agreement. We will continue to collaborate with UNU, United Nations University, to accelerate actions and policies under the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda. To conclude, I hope that this seminar will be an excellent opportunity to share experiences and views on the essential roles of open science and empowerment towards the more sustainable and resilient world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for highlighting the importance of work that has been done by United Nations University, but also coming in the forefront and supporting those endeavors done by United Nations through different funding mechanism. And Japan has been always a great support of science, technology, and innovation, and also highlighting importance of Center of Excellences. And this is what UNESCO, we also establish Center of Excellences in different parts of the world. As highlighted by Excellency, we don't need to remind us that the consequences that humanity is facing from the climate change. But what lies solution? We have the solution with the technology, with the information, but we have to build capacity. And for that, both UNESCO and UNU is committed, and we really need to build capacity on the basis of scientific solution. But the scientific solution should come and also to deliver the citizen science. I just got the indication that our virtual participants are finally able to follow us. So I would like to invite Dr. Abou Amani, Director of Water Science Division, Secretary of Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, who join us from Paris to give his opening statement. Abou, you have the floor. My apologies. I hope Abu is listening us or connected to us. Okay, finally, yes, I think. Sorry for the technical problem that we are facing. I think their mic and camera needs to be, you need to allow to open their mic and camera, please. We are still having problem with the virtual audience. Please try to solve it. We will, of course, move with the program, but please try to solve so that we can hear from our virtual participant, please. Finally. Please turn audio. Yeah, I think you should be able to speak, Abul. No. We can't hear. No? We can't hear. We don't hear you. I think as we are not able to solve the technical issues yet, we will wait for the intervention for virtual participants. Apologies for this technical issue. I hope our colleague will be able to solve it. I would like to invite in the podium our panelists who are here with us today so that we can start the program. We can move on with the program. Yes, we are, I just want to apologize to our virtual participants and colleagues, the technical staff here trying their hard to get you online. I hope they will be able to sort this out soon. With that, while waiting for the technical glitches to be solved, I would like to invite in the podium our panelists. And in my list, today's panelist, Professor Shinobu Yume Yamaguchi, Director, UNU Institute for Advanced Study of Sustainability, please. Dr. Yamaguchi is leading UNU since November 2019. Her field of specialization includes international development cooperation, ICT, education reform, and policy of education, science, technology, application of technology in world history.
Is it our session, Rita?
Okay. Well, you can stay here so that we can go back to our virtual participants. Abu, you have the floor. It's been fun today. What a challenge. Abu, can you try to speak now?
Unfortunately, we cannot hear the room, huh?
We can hear you. So there is other way around, but we can hear. Rita, could you please tell Abu to speak? We can hear.
But we cannot hear them. They can hear us, no?
Yes, yes, we can hear
Yes,
you.
Abu, they can hear you. They're telling you to start. I'm going to paste here the YouTube link for you to listen to them.
Thank you, Rita.
Okay, so thank you very much. And first of all, our apologies for this technical hiccup. I'm delighted to welcome you to this side event we're organizing together with the UNU on the transformative pathways for climate action through open science and citizen science and youth empowerment. I would like really to welcome you and to thank you for making time to be with us. So because we are run out of time, I want to be very brief, just to highlight the complexity of climate water-related challenges we have been facing. So far, we have heard a lot of burning messages coming from world leaders those days, and also from the UN Secretary General. And I want to quote the UN Secretary General. We need a climate solidarity pact. We need climate action on all fronts, and we need it now. So this is really calling for urgency, and for that we need innovative, transformative action. And we believe that what science has a key role to play in providing solutions. So in that regard, we at UNESCO, we will leverage the UNESCO recommendation on open science, as you know, which was approved last year by the UNESCO's member states, calling for science to be accessible to all so that it can help to provide solutions for addressing complex water challenges. We want also to highlight the need for evidence-based decision-making in addressing those interrelated climate water challenges. In that regard, as you know, during the meeting which was held in October for the stakeholder and preparatory meeting on the UN 2020 Water Conference, there was a call for a science-based assessment in order to provide solutions to the challenges we have been facing on water resources. So UNESCO is committed to mobilize the scientific community in moving forward this important idea of science-based assessment and to prepare a comprehensive action plan which will be presented at the UN 2020 Water Conference. I want also to highlight, if you want transformation, we need also to bring on board youth as agent of change. And in that regard, I believe that the work which is going on within UNU is a remarkable example in that regard, so that we can advance the deep social transformation which is needed. This session will look at how to harness scientific knowledge, cooperation, and capacity building for transformative action on climate change and SDGs. And I want to thank all the panelists who acted really to come and discuss ideas so that we can provide solutions to the challenge we have been facing. So the main aim is to sensitize policymakers to move forward for a proactive and integrative water policies approaches moving forward towards the UN 2023 Water Conference. So I would like once again to thank you and to ask Anil to continue the moderation of the session, and once again to apologize on these technicality issues. Anil, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Abou. Thank you very much for providing UNESCO's insight, particularly highlighting open science and citizens' engagement in the scientific processes. After all, we are trying to support communities to support their lives and livelihoods. So the means of implementation should be based on the scientific findings. Now we will move to keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker doesn't need any introduction. He is a prominent global water resources expert, hydrologist. He has lots of scientific endeavors and lots of scientific paper, but also Professor Oki from Tokyo University has served already as a vice rector of the United Nations University in the past. He was the one who led several freshwater resources chapter and contributed since year 5. And he's one of the prominent hydrologists who won.
Okay, so is it my turn?
Yes, it's your turn, Taikan. Over to you.
Oh, okay. Okay, so
1 minute. You're still introducing.
Sorry.
Okay, I think I need to write here that I have done my introduction. So Taikan will guide us through the keynote on transformative pathways for climate action through open and citizen science.
Hopefully that Anil, I hope you can listen now. And Yume-san, how are you? I hope that, okay, great. I'm very happy that. Okay, so I'll skip that some, okay, first of all that I'm very sorry that I cannot be with you, and now I'm feeling due to this technical issue that I shall be in Egypt, but unfortunately I couldn't make it. But so I will skip that what I prepared about my presentation scientific part that requires a little bit more the figures to be presented, then jump in to that the some statement that quoting firstly from that water shortages about on the climate book. As all of you should know that the Greta Thunberg created the climate book, and it was released 2 weeks ago, and I had an opportunity to contribute an essay, and it said that climate and environmental crisis has been brought about by the aggregate of the moment-to-moment choices we make in our daily lives. And we are beginning to wake up to this fact, even if only from a selfish, utilitarian perspective. Many businesses now understand that in the long run, taking steps to avoid climate and ecological crisis is the wisest choice for them. Many politicians and governments are highly sensitive to public opinion, which is increasingly united behind climate justice. If there had been more of us trying to keep the climate stable by altering our behaviors than those who were changing the climate by not altering their behaviors, decisive climate action for a just transition would have been taken much earlier. And how can we act? Then we can minimize the future climate change with our daily choices, like that how we buy products that are made and what policies politicians we vote for. That was critically relevant in some nations in the last few days, and where and how we live. In order to choose actions that do not result in greenwash, each of us as citizens must have the appropriate scientific knowledge, and to do this, the scientific knowledge must be easy to understand and accessible to all. But it is not enough. The invention and dissemination of innovative science and technology is essential to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions throughout the world, which are still increasing. It is young people who can accomplish this. Not only scientific geniuses, but also countless and diverse stakeholders such as engineers, citizens, business persons, and government officers around the world who will put it into practice. And the care and support must also be given to ensure that no one is left behind as a result of transformative actions, and a coordinated multi-stakeholder effort from the grassroots to governments is required. And before closing my talk, I would say that game changer is needed for water. Like that UNFCCC has its IPCC and discussing the latest scientific knowledge, reviewing about the climate, and UNCBD has IPBES and is discussed and review about the biodiversity. And UNESCO HB, even though that's not the UN framework of convention, but still is an UN-wide activities or the member state activity, and discussing about water and the summarizing, or they would like to give that the scientific evidence, but there is no IPCC or the IPBES type of the body to about the open science-based validation mechanism for resilience and sustainability in water. So a global science-based assessment like IPCC model contributes to ensure availability and accessibility of up-to-date assessments addressing the intersectoral, systematic, integrative, and transdisciplinary nature of the complex and interconnected water challenges. So here are remarks that I skipped the figures, but by the end of the century, some parts of South Asia, Africa will be exposed to the risks of heat waves and torrential rains never experienced by humans before. Smooth exchanges of knowledge through global partnerships based on multilateralism is critically relevant for implementing efficient adaptation measures. So if you are interested in these results, please refer that our paper on the environmental research communication published this summer by myself and Mr. Sano. And we have no choice but to rely on unknown science and technology to act for the climate and water, and citizens and young people are our hope. So open science-based mechanism for resilience and sustainability in water is urgently needed. So because the climate change is a change in the water cycle. So thank you very much for your attention, and hope the session will go smoothly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Taikan, for providing excellent keynote. Of course, I'm not going to summarize, but I will just highlight some of the key words you mentioned. the climate change is aggravated because of the choice we made, because of the bad choice we made. And because of that bad choice, which is probably not following science-based solution or ignoring science-based solution, we come to this point. And you also highlight the importance of citizen science and open science, as well as you highlight the science-based evaluation and assessment, but particularly engaging citizens. We will get into that. So with your keynote elements, now I will go and invite our panelists who will present some of the case studies from the field, as well as from UNESCO Heritage Site Biosphere Reserves, but also from UNU case studies. The first speaker in this interactive panel session, and I would like to ask audience to really park their questions so that we can really make some time for interactive panel discussion, so that you can ask questions to panelists. Hopefully the technical system will be solved by them. Our first panelist comes from UNESCO, Transformative Pathways for Climate Action in UNESCO's Biosphere Reserves, Koen Verbist. Dr. Verbist is a program specialist. He has a degree on hydrology, bioengineering. He has been working with UNESCO for more than a decade now, both in the headquarters in Latin America, in Africa, and he successfully implemented many activities which were establishing and creating buy-in effect with the communities on flood and drought risk management, but also climate risk-informed decision analysis. And he has undertaken and supported several technical courses as well for the local stakeholders. Koen, you have the floor, if you can hear me.
Good afternoon, Anil. Apologies for delay. We have a bit of a challenge here hearing you. I hope you can hear me. Okay, I assume so. It seems like I can't present from my end either, so I'll have to summarize the presentation just by talking. I hope that's fine. So I wanted to give some examples on transformative pathways for climate action through open and citizen science, and particularly highlighting some work we're doing in Southern Africa. Of course, we are aware that region of Africa is particularly vulnerable to extreme events and climate shocks. So in this sense, the extreme weather events that are amplified by climate change put further stress on the water resources in the region. So how are we basically tackling that challenge? And one way of approaching that is to use UNESCO's designated sites, and we have several of them, including what we call biosphere reserves, which we are using as observatories for climate change adaptation. And particularly for Southern Africa, we've been piloting in 16 biosphere reserves in several countries of the region, and to identify how we can really look at hazard and risk assessment, climate change impact assessment, but also through education for sustainable development, addressing the climate change challenges in the area. And just giving you a few examples of that. We saw, for example, after Cyclone Idai hit the area in 2019, how a lot of impact was seen of landslides affecting hundreds of people. So basically through science approaches, we've been identifying communities at risk, identifying future potential areas that could be affected by landslides, identifying which schools, health facilities, roads are most affected using a science approach. And this of course helps us to go towards an adaptation approach. The same for flood risk. We're really going down to the level of the household to really understand what is happening, who is most at risk, and addressing their challenges. One way we also work is through monitoring and early warning. And of course, we remember the words of the UN Secretary General for last March, where he highlighted there is a need to protect everybody on Earth the next 5 years through early warning systems. And here, of course, we're contributing from UNESCO to set up systems for different countries in Southern Africa, for Africa, and for Latin America so far. And another element which has been highlighted already is the use of new technology. And of course, we see a new technology arising, especially in the framework of open science. A very promising approach is the use of Internet of Things, which is connecting different levels of sensors together using an open science approach. And UNESCO is piloting several of those applications around the world. Something else which was highlighted in the keynote speech was about the use of citizen science. And I think IHP 9, our new program, which is running for the next 8 years, is starting to come up with a framework to work on citizen science applications in water resource management. And we're currently applying it already in 2 bias reserves in South Africa, looking how we can increase the voice of local stakeholders in collecting and processing data to identify challenges related to water levels and water quality. But of course, all of that is in the framework of climate change. How can we bring in communities into climate change adaptation? And one of the approaches we've been rolling out since 2018 is the climate risk informed decision analysis, or CRIDA, on which we have a session later this week. And basically, we're trying to move away from top-down decision making and really starting through a bottom-up approach, a shared vision with all the stakeholders on board to identify climate change adaptation issues. So this methodology, which was developed in 2018, is really about a collaborative process to adaptation. And just one example we've been elaborating over the last few months is in Zimbabwe, where we basically have been working with all the actors, NGOs, local communities, state parties, to really identify what are the challenges they're already facing in terms of water resource management. But basically, at the same time, we want to identify how we can solve those issues together in a more integrative way. And as one of the results, we did, for example, very detailed climate stress testing, understanding what is currently already under stress, how is that going to evolve over time, and also coming up with solutions with the community, identifying what are the most adapted solutions for their needs, and eventually coming up with check dams for 60 locations in that area. And just to highlight as a final point that CRIDA is being also launched at this COP for Africa, and we have a special session next week on Monday at UNESCO Pavilion, where we'll be launching the CRIDA methodology in English, French, and Arabic, and you're also welcome to join that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Koen, for highlighting some of the locally oriented, solution-oriented climate risk-informed decision analysis done in several parts of Africa, but also flood and drought monitoring system. So now we will go to the panelist here from the virtual difficulties session with the hybrid session with somebody who is here with us, Professor Shinobu Yume Yamaguchi, Director of United Nations Institute, the Advanced Study for Sustainability, Regional Center of Expertise on Education for Sustainable Development. Over to you.
Yes, my PowerPoint. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, and our other distinguished speakers and panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. And it is my great honor to be the part of this panel and co-organizing this event with UNESCO. I'm the director of the United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability, located in Tokyo, Japan. Welcome, everyone. At our institute, we focus on harnessing the power of research and education to help realize the sustainable future for us, the people, and for the planet. We place, in fact, youth empowerment as one of the key elements of this effort. And COP27 this year, we have been presenting our new postgraduate degree specialization on Paris Agreement, which is planned to take place the next Fall. But today, I'd like to introduce our locally contextualized initiatives on education for the sustainable development ESD, which I think is highly relevant to today's discussion. At the opening, our Vice Rector, the Dr. Xiaomeng Shen, mentioned local scientists are the local citizens as well, but vice versa can be said, meaning local citizens, when they're educated and trained, they can be the local scientist and to have a very sustainable solution. So I hope to share some of those examples from our initiatives. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please.
The regional centers of expertise on education for sustainable development mentioned by our Vice Minister Ono earlier in his opening is a network with over 180 members across the globe. And we actually, our institute serve as a secretariat for this network. And each regional center is a multi-stakeholders network engaging formal, non-formal, and informal organizations in the local and regional community. And these partners collaborate together jointly to promote and implement ESD project at the local level using education as a mechanism to bridge the global agenda with the local action. During the period, next slide please. During the period of the global action, the program ESD between 2015 and 2019, and these regional centers implemented 137 projects on climate action in 32 different countries. And they used education as a key enabler for implementing different kinds of climate action projects in their local, the community. Next one, please. And in fact, most of these projects, 74%, had a community education component involving the general public as their beneficiaries. And interestingly, many of these community education projects not only educated the citizens, but also trained to be their local scientists by contributing to the data collection on climate change in their own community. And those data really served for them to come up with their nature-based local solutions. Over the half of the project also focused on empowering the youth through the education outside of the classroom. So by training the youth to be knowledgeable about their local climate issues and what kind of solution can be available, they later in the project have become educators for the wider community. And I think it is very important to note, of course, educating youth is critical, but we must also use education as a mechanism to change behavior among adults and seniors as a part of the broader transformation in a society. So let me quickly share the 3 examples from Africa and North America. The next slide, please. One project in eastern Uganda actually focused on enabling resilience on climate change by engaging the multi-stakeholders in the community. And actually, this project brought the school children outside of the classroom to learn math, science, and art to be applied and to understand the impact of the climate change. So the teachers always involved the farmers from many different parts of the community where lessons were held. And they brought handy knowledge about the surrounding area, and in fact, the farmers themselves began to learn about how to mitigate climate change in their everyday practices. And what was interesting, both students and farmers learned about the data collection methodologies, and then they created interventions to reduce actual emission as a part of their coursework. So the project was so successful that it spread out to the other district in the region. And the second example from the United States involving agricultural workers to learn how to adapt in the face of climate change. And in fact, next slide. One more.
One more.
Yes. This is an example from the United States, and in fact, the agricultural sector in the US has been relatively slow to respond for changing practices for the health and safety under a higher heat index. So the many agricultural workers were the young people from the marginalized communities. So by educating those the workers through the regional network, this project helped them to track the both climate and personal health. They're helping them to operate safely under the rising temperatures. And that was really combining multiple SDGs, including health, decent work, climate actions, the promoted in the community. The last example is from the northern Nigeria. Next slide, please. It focused on the youth involvement in the community to act as a public educators with technology and science for protecting the local trees from the impact of the climate change and developing a development project. In fact, they were trained with the GIS, Geographic Information System, botany and climate science, and they created the localized base map to visualize the large stands of native trees, indicating the areas to avoid removing vegetation, as well as where the vegetation should be replanted. So they used the local cafe to educate the public afterwards on the importance of those forest conservation and reforestation of native trees for their own communities. So all of those initiatives illustrate in different ways that empowering the youth at the different level, at their local level, has enormous potential for the transformative impact. And we are looking forward to further the working with such a regional network and other partners to scale up these innovative approaches and help to accelerate the climate action to avoid what the UN Secretary General this Monday mentioned, the climate chaos. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Shinobu, Yume, Yamaguchi, for presenting Center of Excellences and local case studies from different regions. With the delayed time, I would like to go and check if we were able to solve this technical issue. It seems we still need to improve our capacity. Let's see if Professor Anne would be able to give us her remark on the role of citizen and open science in water sources. And is a bioengineer, Professor Anne van Griensven is a bioengineer at the Free University of Brussels. She has launched many innovative ideas. She is now UNESCO Chair on Open Science. Also, she pioneered e-learning master's program, and she has more than 15 years of research experience. And you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. It's my pleasure to talk about the role of citizens and open science in water resources management. So I'm Anne van Griensven. I'm from the Free University of Brussels, but also the chairholder of the UNESCO Chair on Open Water Science and Education. And we have been starting to promote open science for water management already for more than 10 years through the Open Water Network. And there we were mainly reaching out to water managers, professionals. But with the citizen science, our goal is to reach further to everybody involved, so the citizens, farmers, or anybody involved in water problems. So citizen science is, for many reasons, a growing field in water management. We have been seeing a lot of application in agriculture, often related to irrigation and water use, or to improve the water use efficiency. We also see applications in ecosystem services and water quality applications, where citizens also can play a role in identify or monitor the ecosystem services, for instance, the biodiversity or water quality problems when they observe algae blooms, for instance. But nowadays, we also see a growing interest in applying citizen science for floods and droughts. And this is because also many citizens are affected directly by floods and droughts and want to be part of the solutions. And in these solutions can involve, for instance, the development of real-time monitoring or real-time information towards the people that live in areas that are prone to droughts and floods. So there's nowadays also within the scientific community a lot of innovation towards citizen science, and we see a lot of developments that can help in implementing citizen science. And one of these developments that we see are, for instance, cheap sensors, low-cost sensors, and Internet of Things. The reason is that we want to involve many people and to provide monitoring devices to a large number of people. Sometimes thousands of people or citizens are involved. We need, of course, cheap technologies, because otherwise the cost becomes too large. And then, of course, all these citizens are collecting information, and we also need to bring all this information together. And for this, we see also a lot of developments, for instance, Internet of Things or sensors that are directly connected through the cloud to the internet, let's say, and that are able to send the data in real time towards one system. But we also see, of course, lots of developments in the application or the use of smartphones, because nowadays everybody has a smartphone. It has been growing so rapidly the last decades that it's a technology that is in the hands of people all over the world. And these smartphones can be used to make pictures, to send pictures, but to also collect or to collect events and so on. So the smartphones are becoming more and more also essential in citizen science. And then we also see that sometimes there is a training involved to teach citizens how to collect certain data. For instance, geotagged pictures can be collected. And one step further is, of course, to involve schools and educational programs. But we also see a growing interest of water museum, for instance, to use citizen science within their functioning. And last but not least is also to involve the media, and very often also the social media, to reach out to a large number of people. Unfortunately, I cannot show my slides, but I want to highlight one project that was implemented by the University of Antwerp. It's called Curious Noses in the Garden. Sorry. And in this program, they have been involving 500 people to install a cheap device to monitor the temperature and the soil moisture in gardens, parks, or natural reserves. And these devices observe in real time the temperature and the soil moisture and send it to a system. So you can have an overview of thousands of dots all over Flanders, measuring temperature and soil moisture. And this is, of course, very important to have a better overview of the spatial extent, for instance, of droughts and also flood events. So the first year they implemented these devices, we had a very big flood event in Belgium. So there were initially, the system was designed for drought. The first case was an extreme flood event. And through the data, they could assess how much water gardens can absorb. And so the flood mitigating role is also an aspect where gardens can play a role. Last summer, we had an extreme drought, and there the devices could monitor and show how different designs of gardens have a different role. So the type of vegetation plays an important role in controlling heat, but also in the whole soil moisture context. So with this, I would like to close my talk, and I hope that there will be an interesting discussion later on different types of citizen science, different technologies, and also different applications. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne, and really presenting ideas that science is not something that not reachable to citizens, and really providing example from where even citizens can contribute to generate knowledge for the scientific processes. We will come back to you if our time allows. Now next, let's move on. I would like to invite our next panelist, Professor Awa Niang from UCAD, from University from Senegal, from Dakar. She has a PhD in continental hydrology. She led several projects in Africa, including NEPAD, West Africa Network of Center of Excellences, through which she laid a process to enhance capacity of several Africans in the water issues. And since September 2020, she is acting as a director of Interquality Assurance Unit of Sheikh Anta Diop University of Dakar. Professor Awa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Anil.
We hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Anil. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm Awa Niang Fall from Sheikh Anta Diop University of Dakar. I'm from the doctoral school on water quality and water use. Is an institution doctoral in UCAD. What I wanted to share with you related to the importance of gender and youth empowerment in climate action. We know that worldwide climate change has become one of the most concerning issues for all of you, all of us, and multiple implication on development and growth worldwide over the past decades. So, climate change is a global phenomenon, and in many aspects, gender inequality and climate change are strongly related. Environmental degradation caused by climate disaster can exacerbate poverty and related inequality, as well as food and water insecurity. We see that in our countries this year during the rain flooding. Women and young people, young women, especially at risk of food shortage, poverty, violence during climate-related natural disasters. Several cases have been reported this year in West Africa during the About youth empowerment and climate action, climate change awareness is pivotal, for any society, especially for youth. Currently, humanity is living with the largest generation of youth people, young people in its history. There are between 1.8 billion young people in the world between the age of 10 and 24, according to UNDP data. Young people are so becoming more aware of the hazards and difficulties posed by the climate issue, as well as the chance for sustainable development provided by a solution to the problem. Awareness is so essential to be raised among youth, and as identified by youth potential means will be social media. Developing youth to become self-aware and self-responsible for their environment and society is a need of time. So empowerment occurs when women are able to increase their bargaining power through a strategy of grassroots activism and organization. In developing countries where resources are scarce, government policy is often a necessity for women's empowerment. The joint effort of women, local agencies, national and state governments, and international organizations produce a more holistic sense of agency. African women are more vulnerable than men since, according to UNDP forecast, 90 million of African women will go starving by the year of 2050. There is a proof that the negative effect of climate change as gendered is women suffering the most. Agriculture is a particular policy area where gender mainstreaming is timely in Africa. In Africa, women dominate the informal economy in small-scale food processing, subsistence farming, and small-scale food trade. In reality, 40% of African countries or more of the agricultural labor force is represented by women, while in sub-Saharan Africa, women constitute 60 or 80% of smallholder farmers. There are precarious jobs, informal, without contract or income security, with low income and or productivity gains given the low capacity to adapt to the effects of climate. As women are largely responsible for the maintenance of the natural environment, whose variability in rainfall and temperature affect production patterns, their level of poverty and food insecurity in rural areas. So gender and youth role in the climate action is very high. At an environmental scale, we can have the protection of natural resources, heritage safeguarding. At social level, family and social welfare, increased agricultural production and food security. And at the level of governance, we can expect more equity and justice and greater transparency by improving the role of youth and gender in those actions. Just to finish, some recommendations. The first is the promotion of the diversity of participation that is urgently needed, particularly in climate action, where multi-scale and multi-level methods are essential. When the campaign includes as many people as possible and takes into account gender, socioeconomic status, religion, belief, etc., diversity of participation is accomplished. However, for the campaign to be successful, linking these diverse and multi-level effort is just as important, especially in developing countries. Thank you very much. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Awa, really highlighting the importance that the gender perspective as women and youth are the most vulnerable in this aspect, but also youth, we have opportunity as we have borrowed their time and resources, so that we need to make appropriate decisions so that they are empowered and presenting also recommendation. Next, we will move to Philip Vaughter from UNU Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability. You have the floor, Philip.
Hello. Thank you, everyone. So I believe it's my job to wrap up the session today. But I want to make sure that that's correct. Is this not supposed to be Philip Osano from the Stockholm Environment Institute?
Excuse me,
Yes.
Philip, I was just, it's not yet wrapping time. It's not yet summarizing. I got,
Understood.
It's my mistake because of this, all the difficulties. I meant Philip Osano to invite and make his intervention. Sorry, please hold on and we will call you back. These, because I should have invited Dr. Philip Osano, the director of ACI Africa, and his interest is environmental policy, development, and international affairs. Over to you, Dr. Philip Osano.
Thank you so much, Anil, and good afternoon, everybody. It's really great to be here, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me to share some thoughts, particularly around the work that we are doing on citizen science, engaging youth and education in Africa. So most of you must probably know that one of the action areas under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change has been the Sports for Climate Action. Sport for Climate Action is an initiative that was set up by UNFCCC, and it's actually to try to promote, encourage sports organizations to take action to address climate change. We've had the privilege, Stockholm Environment Institute, together with the United Nations Environment Program, the Regional Office for Africa, to develop a very interesting partnership where we are actually working with the athletics community in order to promote climate education in non-formal settings. That is actually one of the key principles under the UN Sports Climate Action, which is to use education, to really use education for climate action. And so working with Athletics Kenya, which is the National Athletics Federation for athletics in Kenya, we've been doing three things. First is that we have been setting up air quality sensors in stadiums and sports facilities across Kenya. At the moment, we've set up this in 7 national stadiums and sports facility. And while we do that, we actually also set up these sensors in high schools. So as we set up the sensors, we are getting data that helps the Athletics Federation and other sports to monitor, the air conditions of, in the stadium. But at the same time, when we then work with the teachers, particularly science teachers, to be able to also do the monitoring of air quality in the schools. And one of the opportunity we have with that is that we can then bring the athletes, some of the top athletes, and you know Kenya does have a lot of top athletes, to be able to engage with students and to be able to engage with kids in terms of education. So I just wanted to share, I think the second thing we do is then, of course, we then work with some of the athletes in terms of campaigns, particularly tree planting campaigns. That has been going on for a while right now. In fact, I had my colleagues from Athletics Kenya here, but they just out. And during those campaigns, we try to, again, mobilize young people in different kind of NGOs, like non-government organization and so on, and they come and get involved. The third area which has been very interesting for us is actually also to undertake, when we have major public sporting events, we use those as opportunities for highlighting climate action. So just to give you some examples, during the World Environment Day 2022, which was hosted in Stockholm, together with Athletics Kenya and the Swedish Athletics Federation, we hosted a mini marathon for children between the ages of 5 and 13. We had 6,000 kids in Stockholm coming in with their parents. We had 2 top athletes who were working with the kids during that time. We had David Rudisha, who is the current 800 meters Olympic champion, holding the record for 10 years since 2012. And we had Moa Engström from Sweden, who is the European 400 meters championship. And I think these opportunities for us has been very interesting because it allows actually, you know, the kids, particularly most of these young children, when they're not in school, but to learn about climate issues, but at the same time to also learn about the importance of sports, because physical fitness is also very good for health. So it's a combination of creating awareness about climate action, but also in trying to emphasizing the need for keeping physical fitness as a way for ensuring health. The other event which we did was on 8th of May. We held what's called the Uhuru Classic Marathon in Nairobi. We had about 12,000 registered participants during the marathon. During that time, we actually did real-time measurement of air quality and had a session actually with the President of Kenya to actually, during the giving of the prize ceremony, to present the results from our assessment and to have him to speak about the importance of air quality. And that was very good. Most recently in September, we were very privileged to move to Senegal. I think you do know that Senegal, Dakar is the first city in Africa. Senegal will be the first country to host an Olympic event. Senegal will be hosting the Youth Olympic event in 2026. So again, together with the Ministry of Environment in Senegal, together with the National Olympic Committee of Senegal and the National Athletics Federation for Senegal, we set up air quality sensors in the stadium there called Abdoulaye Wade Stadium. And during that time, we actually invited school kids who came in and they did tree planting. And during that time, we also shared some information about climate action. So I just wanted to share this thought and just to say that it's one of the areas where we look towards using sports as an entry point for climate education and targeting young people out of school.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osano. Indeed, there are many fronts, and including sports, through which we can really raise awareness, but also engage youth in the climate monitoring processes. Thank you very much for presenting those ideas. Now, last but not least panelist, Dr. Melissa Brown Goodall, who joins us here. She joined Environmental Innovation Initiative in 2021, and she's the inaugural senior director, and she's developing a strategic vision to leverage academic strength and foster collaboration across discipline on the global environmental challenges. Dr. Goodall, over to you.
first, my deep respect to our IT friends. I should have my presentation.
It seems we are having all the issues today, so let's see. This has been one of the challenges that we are facing, so let's hope that your PowerPoint will be here. Okay.
Yes.
Over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. So I apologize in advance to my friends who are running technology. We're going to go very quickly. This is a lot of slides, and I'm doing it in 5 minutes. I am Melissa Brown Goodall. I run a program called the Environmental Innovations Initiative. Can you go to the next slide, please? Ours is a new program at a very old university in the United States. If we can go to slide 3, that would be great. Perfect. About us. Next, click. We're going to go very quickly on this one. Our mission is to catalyze solutions to real-world, go back, went too far, to real-world environmental challenges. Our top priorities are stewardship of nature, climate action, and societal resilience. And our job, as a very new, I just started in March of 2021 doing this particular job, our job is to elevate Penn's impact in the world, to catalyze transdisciplinary research, to inform transformative education, and to foster community and collaboration. Now we go to the next slide. This one is automated, so it will do its own work. The biggest thing that I have done in this job so far, the thing I'm very proud of so far, is that we actually have taken climate and translated it to every discipline in our university. And what we've done is not just to say everyone's going to reduce their climate emissions. We're looking at the role of our School of Veterinary Medicine, of our School of Dental Medicine, of our School of Business, and saying, okay, what are the roles that these various disciplines can and should play? These are now public on our website. There was one school that was holding out because they were crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and I used a carrot as big as a stick and said, I'm going to talk about this at the COP, let's go. And so these are now public on our website. Next slide. We also do something called research communities, and these are super important because we identify problems and we ask for transdisciplinary solutions. They have to be transdisciplinary. These are not just projects, though. They can evolve. So we're doing air quality monitoring in schools. We're doing water sensors, et cetera. They have to involve students, and they have to have public-facing outcomes. I'm beyond the point where academia should be doing things just for the sake of knowledge. Next slide. This is just some examples on the next slide of our research communities. We're doing things in Philadelphia as an anchor institution. We're doing things in the state of Pennsylvania, and we're doing things in the world with this program. Next slide. We're also trying to figure out exactly how our teaching and research connect to the Sustainable Development Goals. So we've analyzed the teaching and research of all of our faculty members to say in the aggregate, this is how we're doing. But also, we're using this to create a database so that if somebody who's interested in good health and well-being as well as climate, we can connect them with peers who are also interested in these things. Next slide. I wanted to just spend the second half of my presentation talking about fostering collaboration because that is really the key role that we play on campus. We connect people both on campus and in the world. Next slide. So our team runs what's called Penn's Climate Week. Next slide. Yeah, there we go. This year we had over 35 events on our one campus. Our focus was Indigenous knowledges, so we brought some alumni to campus who are Indigenous alumni, but also had our faculty members, our students all host their own events, and we had a teach-in. So it was a really vibrant way to really make climate action accessible to absolutely everyone on our campus. Next slide. But I also run something called the Global University Climate Forum, that is really aimed at empowering students to take action. Next slide. And this one is one of those ones where we're going to click multiple times. I apologize, but there we go. We started this in 2009 as a way, we saw students attending the COP in 2009, all of them going to be a part of history, all of them very excited to be involved, but really there's not a whole lot of action, or at least in 2009 there were not a lot of action-oriented ways for students to participate. So we started this as a way to get students to come up with their idea for a project that would yield measurable results over the course of a reporting period. We did it again at Rio Plus 20. Next, click. There we go. Again in Paris, and again last year. Each time it has grown, each time it has evolved. Last year we had to do, obviously, we went to virtual programming in 2020. The amazing thing there was that we were pushed, we were inspired to innovate in a way that made it so that we had a much more accessible program, a much broader program, and we were able to interact with the students for a much longer period of time. So we've since evolved that model, and now we're thinking about ways to get creative again. Next slide. This is just a map. Oh, yeah. So these are some examples of some of the projects. We can just click through these. And it's really remarkable. Things like sustainable hunting, reusable containers, educating school kids, games, all these amazing projects that the students themselves came up with, and they told me what they were going to measure. They're not measuring greenhouse gases. They told me, this is how we're going to measure our success, and this is how we're doing. And I feel like that's an important part of the empowerment narrative. Next slide. We took their final reports last year and turned them into a book. It's not an actual physical book, it's an online publication, and we batched them in these action-oriented ways. So measure, advance, innovate, rejuvenate, act, and connect. These are the ways that we're framing their work. Next slide. And we were very lucky last year. We got the Patricia Espinosa, the chair of the UNFCCC last year, wrote our foreword, and our next steps were written by Christiana Figueres. So this is really a sign that we've made it. We're so excited about this. And we were able to present the information from all of the students who completed their work for 2021 in this online publication. Next slide. And I did the math coming into this event. We've had 980 students participate in this program so far over the course of those 5 events. They are from 62 countries, and to my mind, if each one of these people touches the lives of just 10 people, we've had this amazing ripple effect, and I'm super proud of that. We've also become a hallmark program of the International Sustainable Campus Network. Next slide. I think there should be one more slide after the, 2 more slides after this. There we go. So thinking about this event again, you know, it's amazing to me that we've got these extraordinary thought leaders saying these urgent things. We've really got to move faster. We've got to do better. We've got to have systemic change. And thinking these through, you know, this is both empowering and enlightening and energizing, but I'm going to give you the scariest quote of all. Next slide. This is my daughter after she came to my event where we were talking about this big publication. I was so proud, and she called me immediately after the event, and she said, okay, grab a pencil, you got to take notes. And I said, oh gosh, why? What did I do? And she said, okay, so you people like the grown-ups in the room are doing amazing things, but what you're not doing is 2 things. You're saying we need system change, but you're not telling us exactly how my individual action connects to the system change. And number 2, you're not giving me the good tools for convincing my peers. She said, you know, I have all these peers. She's an engineering major at another university in Pennsylvania. And she said, I have all these people who need me to tell them why they should be doing this, and I don't have that. So I'm going to close on that because that's my homework right now, and I would love for folks to give me ideas about how to evolve the Global University Climate Forum and the other programs that we do.
Thank you, Melissa, for presenting Penn State's activity, including your insight also. Since we have difficulties and we have taken time from the following session also, I quickly invite Philip Vaughter to give us his overview of the session. Philip, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, thank you to all the speakers today for a really fantastic session. I think we have three key messages today from this section. One is citizenship. We heard a lot about how the face of climate action is shifting from just what are world leaders doing, what are community leaders doing, to what are citizens doing? What are we all doing? And how are we engaging not only with data, but how to act on that data for climate action? So we heard a little bit about how this was occurring in South Africa from Koen. We also heard some examples from the RCE network with Professor Yamaguchi, and from Professor Van Gersen in Belgium. We heard about the roles of citizens in taking action in looking at drought as part of climate change, and how citizens can not only be victims of the problems, but also be engaged with the solutions. I think our second key take-home message today is intersecting identities. So we heard from from Awa Niang Fall from University of Dakar about the particular burden that climate change is placing on women and youth, particularly in Africa, but around the world. But then also connecting back to that citizenship, how women and youth are able to take agency, and when policy interventions are necessary for that, and also when grassroots organizations can capitalize on that agency to bring about solutions and to look about what comes next. And finally, just so I'm not taking too much time, I think one of the key messages today was action. So we're not moving about knowledge for knowledge's sake, as Melissa just said in the last section. We are talking about how do we use knowledge to educate, not just so that people are aware of the problems, but so that we are actually giving them the tools they need to take action to stop the problems, and to not just depend on people far removed to solve these problems for them, but to actually take agency in their own households, in their own communities, in their own cities, in their own countries, and look at what actions come forward with informed decision-making from this type of citizen science. So there was a lot of other great content today. I know we don't have a lot of time to go over it, but I wanted to once again thank all the speakers and just say how interesting it is watching the COP for the last 15 years about how much talk has moved from the boardrooms to talk about what people are actually doing on the streets and in their daily lives. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip, for very nicely summarizing the key messages. Of course, three key messages that you have highlighted, all direct towards action and also intersectionality. I think we also like to have your key messages, the point that you have taken, so that we can submit to UNFCCC. Please forward that to us. And from my part, also, of course, I would like to thank our co-organizer UNU and all the speakers and panelists for their key intervention. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to talk about climate action, I think, for the three reasons. We are not in the track to reach 1.5 degree. This has been already in the media. We wanted to go through mitigation, but we are not in the right track. We need to adapt because we are not reaching 1.5. And then we also need to think about migration, because if we are not doing right mitigation and adaptation, perhaps there are people in the vulnerable regions, sea level rising or melting glacier, they need to move to some other places. So we need to have the really science-based solution provided. So these are my key fundamental take from this event that we have taken. And thanks again, UNU colleague and my UNESCO colleague from Paris, with whom we work together to organize this fantastic session. Thank you all.